Hi, everybody. I'm Nancy Hassel of American Pet Professionals, and I am so happy to be here for a panel discussion on celebrating diversity in the pet industry during Global Pet Expo's Learning Series 2021 style. So, welcome to those that have tuned in for this panel session. And please note at the end of the session, the contact information for each of our panelists will be posted so that you can reach out to each of them after the session. So I am so honored to have our three amazing guest panelists with us today. Brian Taylor, aka the Dog Father of Harlem. Hey, Brian.
Hey, what's
Mary,
going on? How you doing?
hey, Mary Tan of Whisker Media. Hey, Mary.
Hey, Nancy.
And of course, Sterling Davis, aka the Trap King.
Hey,
Oh,
Nancy.
and your cat. That's awesome.
Comedic
So
Joe.
welcome, everybody. I am so happy that you are here today for our panel discussion. And we may see some guest appearance from cats and cattails as the session goes, which we love here in the pet industry. So I would love to have each of you introduce yourselves, your business, your nonprofits. Brian, let's start with you. Tell us, everybody, what you do, your name, all that good stuff.
Hi, definitely. So my name is Brian Taylor, better known as the Dog Father of Harlem. I'm a small business owner in Harlem. I own Harlem Doggy Day Spa. And last year, I wanted to just travel across the country and find ways to help people that's been impacted through COVID. So the best way I did it is doing what I do the best is as a dog groomer and a pet professional. I got a bunch of African Americans together to travel from New York, DC, North Carolina, Atlanta, Dallas, and LA. And then we just did Louisiana and Brooklyn. And we got together, 63 of us, and we groomed dogs and we, connected and just try to find ways to show, the pet industry that, African Americans are pet professionals. They own their own businesses. They are dog groomers, they're dog walkers, and that we do exist in this industry and that we also should get a piece of the doggy pie or the cat pie or whatever part of the industry that the pet professionals, are interested in. So that's what I do. It's my mission, and I want to continue to bring in more African Americans to get into the industry as professionals. But at the same time, I want to do fun things and collaborate with different brands and just open up doors that everyone can have in a career and have a fulfilling, working with animals.
I love it. And Brian, when you and I have talked before, I loved your pup relief tour. I was
Thank you so much.
very jealous of the fact that you were touring during COVID. I'm like, I want to
I know it
go.
was scary, but like, sometimes, man, when things just stare in your face, it gives you an opportunity to find greatness. I mean, we're very on top of what the COVID requirements were for each state. We really focused on social distancing. And what we did best is that we did all the check-ins and the checkouts outside of the salon. We had masks on. We had people tested before the tour just to make sure they're negative for COVID. And we just really stayed close together and we just knew that we were doing something bigger than what was going on. And the truth of the matter is that, especially in New York, a lot of pet parents really relied on their pets when they lost family members and when this person is sick in their lives. And so at the end of the day, these pets are at home. They're not being treated. They're not having spa day. They have long nails. So sometimes it really feels good when you can have men's best friend look and feel their best. So yes, it was a challenge. Yes, things can happen. By the end of the day, a lot of pets were adopted during this time. So a lot of people felt alone and they needed closeness for animals. At the same time, it's so important that we gave spa treatments to animals who really needed this at this
Yeah.
time. So, I mean, for me, it was worth it all the way. I was scared. I was, I had a lot of mixed emotions because I lost family members, but I knew that I was doing it for a bigger cause. And here we are now. We found ways to work through this pandemic and we have a whole conference online
Yeah.
while we still finding ways to just live in our new lives. So it was worth it for me.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that you were very transparent with like getting tested. I saw your Instagram story of you getting tested and all the things that you were talking about. So people understood you were doing it the proper way to be
Yeah,
safe. And I
of
love
course.
that you're vulnerable and saying that it was scary because a lot of people might see things like that and be like, they're not paying attention, but you were definitely paying attention. So
No,
thank you for
of
that
course. Thank you.
introduction, for everything that you're doing. It's so inspiring. Miss
Thank you.
Mary, I would love to know all about Whisker Media. How did you get into the pet industry?
Yeah, so I actually started out as a news reporter. I was a reporter at New York One. I was all over the country in Atlanta, Las Vegas. And, I was the crime reporter and I really wanted to report on animals, but I just, I guess I people thought I was really good as a crime reporter, but deep down, I'd always wanted to do animal things. And so I eventually got out and went into government PR. And that was really interesting as well. But my heart was always in animal welfare and animal PR. And so while I was still in government, I started Whisker Media, which is a pet PR firm. But I represent not only for-profit pet businesses, but the company really has a mission for homeless animals, as well as basically workforce development in animal welfare as well in terms of making it more diverse. And one of my fantastic clients is Sterling, who you'll hear from shortly. And Sterling and I have this strong passion for cats. And so I just love what I do because I get to help wonderful people such as Sterling, as well as I have this other amazing client that I just want to give a shout out to, Companions and Animals for Reform and Equity. And that is a workforce development nonprofit to get more people of color in the animal industry, whether that's dog grooming, whether that's working at shelters, whether that's being a veterinarian. And so
Awesome.
it's just wonderful to be a part of this.
That's so awesome. I can't wait to learn more about the other client you were just talking about, because that is so needed in this industry. And we are going to dive deeper into that. But thank you for introducing yourself and telling us your background. You and I have similar backgrounds. I worked in PR, I work in the pet industry. So, and I also worked in TV back in the day. So it's kind of funny. I've met a lot of pet industry people that have had a media TV background of all over the place, and then they're having their own pet business. So it's really quite interesting to meet more and more people like that. So thank you. So Sterling, tell us a little bit about the Trap King.
Hey, Sterling. Thanks for having me first. Mary, thank you. I love Mary to death. Dog Father of Harlem, that's my dude. I follow him. I'm kind of fan guy right now. But I go by Sterling Trap King Davis. I started my nonprofit Trap King Humane Cat Solutions at around 2017. I come from a music entertainment background, so I was actually in the middle of a tour when I decided to do cat rescue. I dove in heart first. I still love music. I've been able to combine the two and do cat raps, but I started my nonprofit Trap King Humane Cat Solutions with a focus on TNR, which is trap, neuter, return. It's the humane alternative for death and euthanasia for stray and feral cat populations. It's the process where I go out, I catch the cats in humane traps so they're not hurt or anything, get them spayed, neutered, and vaccinated, and then they're returned back to their colony. And this prevents overpopulation and spreading disease. So I started my own nonprofit, like I said, in 2017, sold everything I had to get a conversion van, live out of it, and do TNR, cat rescue. I was determined when I saw it wasn't a lot of men or a lot of people in the Black community involved in cat rescue. So I wanted to focus on bridging that gap between community cat care, animal rescue, and the Black community. And that's what I've been doing since, on the road, spreading the word.
That is so amazing. And didn't you just get a brand new RV?
I just upgraded. I started with a 1997 conversion van. So living out of that thing was crazy. I bumped my head like a million times because you can't really stand up in it. So I just upgraded to the Trap RV, or the TNRV, however you want to go with that. But yeah, so now I have a restroom and a lot more space for me and my kitties, Demita Joe and Alana Smew set.
That's such a fun way to get around and to meet people across the pet industry and do what you're doing by introducing people to TNR that maybe have never heard of TNR. Still meet people all the time that don't know what that means. So I appreciate everything that you're doing as well. And I'm so happy that you're here and introducing what you're doing to the global audience. So we're definitely shining a light on celebrating diversity in our pet industry and finding a way of how we as a whole, the whole pet industry, can move forward and do better as an industry. And I know a lot of amazing people like the three of you. We could have panel session after panel session after panel session, I think, of all the amazing people that are doing great things in the pet industry. But I would love to ask you guys, we could go around the room a little bit, just some questions and have a natural conversation, because I think a lot of times we don't always talk about all the things that go into running a grooming. As I know you don't just do grooming, Brian, you do a lot of things, and then running a nonprofit and running that education and getting those clients in PR and learning about those businesses. So there's a lot of parameters to it and backstories. But I would like to start out with something to inspire some of the people that are coming into the industry, whether they're, 50 and lost their job, unfortunately, to COVID, and now are deciding that this is the time they're going to go into their pet career, or they're a young person that doesn't have any pet influencers other than who they might see on Instagram. What is it something that you have struggled with in your career that maybe now you've overcame, that you can speak about to help those that are coming into the pet industry or just starting their nonprofit or their business? Whoever wants to go first, you can pop your hand up.
Yeah, I would say the doubt. I mean, that's the first thing I think that I had to overcome. I even went skydiving. I heard a little message from Steve Harvey, and he was talking about jumping off the pot, not being afraid. And I took that metaphor and took it pretty far and went skydiving to get my mind to jump, to take that next step. But I think that's one of the things that I would say would help is to don't be afraid, take that leap, get rid of that doubt, because if it's in your heart, you can push through it. And hard work, anything is going to take hard work, but if you love it, it doesn't feel like hard work. So I would say get rid of the doubt and take that jump. That's one of the things that it was hard for me to say, hey, I'm gonna leave this rap tour with a rapper named Tech9 who is pretty popular. I really wanted to work with this dude, so I'm leaving this rap tour with Tech9 to go do cat rescue. Like, that was like, outside of my friends calling me crazy, it was a lot. I had a lot to doubt and turn around, but it was in my heart. It's what I wanted to do, and I did it. I stuck with it. So I would say that get rid of that doubt. You don't have to go skydiving like me. That might be a little bit much, but take that jump. Get rid of that doubt. Don't be afraid.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that is always a barrier, is being worried, right, about what's going to happen.
Oh,
Mary?
yeah.
Yeah, I want to say, as somebody who's been to some of the pet trade shows, it can be really intimidating, especially if you're new and you see all these people and they know each other. And you know what? Just face your fear and do it. Go up to people, because sometimes it can be really intimidating. There'll be clusters of people around. First of all, it's okay if people say no, they're not interested in your product, because, you're not any worse off than you were before. But 9 times out of 10, when you face your fears and just go up to somebody you don't know, they're very nice. I mean, and there'll always be a few ducks out there that aren't that friendly, but I find especially the pet industry to be pretty welcoming and just a really great group of people. I mean, if you love animals, I always think that there's a part of you have a special part in your heart. And so, I mean, as pet people, we kind of have this common bond before we even know each other.
Yeah, I agree. We are a pretty friendly industry compared to a lot of industries. Being in media, Mary, you can understand that as well.
Yes.
Brian, would you want to add something to that? Helping somebody overcome their struggle?
Yeah, I honestly think that if you're going into the pet industry, you go into the pet industry with the idea like, hey, I love animals and I want to work with animals and I want to connect people through animals. So like, I think some of the thing that I definitely want to dispel is that, oh, I'm in the pet industry because I don't like people. I want to work with animals. No, you're actually working with animals, but you're working with people with a common interest. The common interest is the love for animals. I think definitely everyone who is interested in this industry, you got to get in the industry understanding that you're going to be meeting some awesome people that love the same thing that you do. So just imagine that. That's a good icebreaker when you're in a room full of place, and then you can say, oh, that dog looks so cute. Oh my God, that's one of my favorite breeds. Oh, how did you do that? like those icebreaker really takes down a lot of the defense mechanism we have together. I think my challenge originally when I came into the industry, it was I was faced with my friends think I was crazy. My mom saying like, you are a banker, why are you gonna do this? And then the idea that African Americans didn't love animals as the way as everyone else, and I wanted to prove them wrong because I felt like animals are just a living being, and they are so loving, and they love us without any prejudgments. So just to have such a thing from that is an example of what true pure love is. So I was very excited when I got in, and I knew like when I was in there, this is what I wanted to do. And I didn't let nothing stop me. So it's at the end of the day, to sum it all up, is just really knowing that you have pure love for animals, and it's a good way to connect with people.
It's so.
Can
Go ahead.
Oh no, I just wanted to piggyback on what Brian was saying. That's so important, and I preach that a lot because cat people, we're usually introverts. We're not usually people. Most of my cat people be like, I like cats, I don't like people. So I just want to piggyback off that because we're spreading the word, awareness and rescue. And then as far as what you're doing too in a business, or as far as what Mary do, you do want to be able to do that. So I wanted to piggyback on that because that was a really good point. You got to be a people person and animal person at the same time.
Yeah, a lot of industry is a 9 to 5 is a work concept. Like you're in the media, is about those timelines, getting things done. Is about, but in the pet industry, it's about the love for the animal and what part you want to service them. It's like imagine being in a room with a bunch of dogs that bark at you that don't speak your language, but you still have to communicate with them through your actions. That's a big statement of the kind of person you are, that you can go somewhere and you don't speak languages, but you have to understand body language, and you have to understand what the stress signals are, and still be able to operate and help a living being that doesn't understand what you're really saying.
I love that metaphor of not speaking the language. That's so cool. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that before. It's so true, right?
Yeah.
My dog's pretty smart. I think he understands more than a lot of people, more than I think, but it is really true. I never heard that somebody say that before, especially like if you're doing doggy daycare and the dogs are barking. That's such a cool metaphor.
Yeah.
And Brian, I actually had in my notes for this, the common denominator in our industry is pets and our love of pets, and you took the words right out of my mouth. So I absolutely love that. We're totally on the same wavelength here. I have a couple more questions for you guys. Well, a bunch more, but so I would ask you this. So in that struggle, and we all kind of had that similar, like, go for it, don't let other people stop you, don't listen to the naysayers, right? Is what I like to usually tell people. What advice would you give to anyone that doesn't have anybody to look up to, or doesn't have those immediate influences in their life when it comes to want to work in the pet industry? And I'll give you for example, when I was a kid, there were no women pet professional role models in my life, near me, around me. And it wasn't knocking any of the men in the industry. It's just there was nobody standing out that me as a kid, always wanting to work with pets, took the normal, route of going to college, getting a degree, going into corporate, working in TV, loving all of that, but also knowing I always wanted to work in the pet industry. So if there's somebody that doesn't have anybody to say, hey, I want to do this in the pet industry, what would you say to them? How would you advise giving that role model advice to people within yourself, within the community?
I would say, I would say if you don't have someone in your immediate sight or vision that you can look up to and learn from, the gift and the curse, I think these days, is social media. So it's a lot of bad that comes with social media, but it's a lot of good that comes with social media. When I got started, I didn't know, I saw Jackson Galaxy, and that was about as much as I understood of that. And it was more so of just men working with cats and not being afraid to say, hey, I'm a guy and I love cats. But I would say social media is it can be a bad thing. But what's good about it is you can go to places like Best Friend's website, Alley Cat Allies website. You can learn what techniques, what routes to take, and you can kind of develop your own style. Like I did that. What I noticed about me is that there were other people that were doing TNR, and there were other people doing fostering and adoptions. Where could I fit in? What was my niche to it. And looking at everybody, learning from everybody, I found that my niche was more so bridging that gap, working with people and getting different demographics and men involved and engaged in it. So I would say one thing, don't go into some of these crazy rabbit holes on the internet, but I think the internet can be a good tool as far as learning where your space is, where you could fit. Because I had a lot of people that wanted to do TNR, and after looking at some other influencers, advocates, they found out, well, maybe TNR isn't my thing. I'm probably good at bottle baby fostering. So they got into bottle baby fostering, and that's their niche. That's where they're good at. So the internet, I think, is a good place. I would definitely be careful with it because, like I said, it's a lot of bad on the internet, but I think it also could be a really good tool as well.
And I would like to add more specifically, LinkedIn. You can find, here's the thing, I get reached out to all the time by people who have an interest in some sort of, especially college students who want to somehow go into the pet industry and do PR. They will reach out to me. I've had students reach out to me from North Carolina and Florida and Texas, and they're just going on LinkedIn, messaging me, hey, I'm so-and-so, would you be open for a quick Zoom call? And even people who aren't college students, but maybe who are looking for a different career transition, that sort of thing. People are really, really great. I mean, you can't be afraid to reach out to people. And then the other thing is I feel like you're always like 1 or 2 steps away from somebody who knows somebody. So even telling your friends and family, eventually you're going to find somebody. I have never been in a situation where I haven't found somebody, like a friend of a friend. Like I'll use my Facebook page and I'll say, hey, I'm looking for somebody on this. And then gradually, like a friend of a friend of a friend will reach out to me and DM me and say, hey, I know all about that. And so you just can't be, nowadays, in a for-profit world or in a nonprofit world where you're trying to get donations, you have to be aggressive, but in the right way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Brian, do you have anything?
Yeah, so I think that, the great thing about the pet industry and animals in general, there's always a local shelter. There's always a local salon, dog grooming business, daycare. There's somebody that's working with animals. I think that if you do a little bit of research and really start tapping into like your local ordinance and see what platform that they have, that's a good way to kind of get some information. And yeah, social media and all these are great, but just offer some volunteer work. Get in there and seeing if you even really like working with animals. What does it entail? Like, and then understand what part of the industry you want to be in. Because we just summarize the whole thing as a pet industry, but there's so much categories from retail to service areas, to the branding side of things in terms of, all these products is being created for the pet industry. Just understand what part of it that you feel the most, that you're happy with. And now a lot of schools, like I do a lot of community outreach with school, where I go in and just talk about the pet industry, and just talk about what the experiences are. So that way you can always find ways to connect. But I think it's us as pet professionals to be the one that's branding and marketing and just really going out and telling people, okay, this is an industry that's growing. And at the end of the day, you can work on the rescue side, you can work on the profit side, you can work on so many sides. By the end of the day, we all are together and we're just doing what we love, which is working with animals.
I think that's awesome. And that was actually one of my next questions is how, as a pet business owner or nonprofit, can you be that beacon in your community to show people that anybody can come into the pet industry and be a successful dog groomer, travel the country in a wrap van, work in the media? I really think that that's so important. And I know a lot of businesses in the pet industry do that, but is there something that, you would like to shine a light on about, other, maybe you go into the schools, Brian, but if there's other communities or organizations that you know about that do that? Because I feel like there are so many, we may not know about all of them, and I feel like there could be more.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I've always done, I mean, I was a special ed kid. I've always learned differently than most people, you know. So I mean, I never want to use that as a clutch. I mean, as a handicap. But the benefit to me is that I love hands-on things. So career days for me in elementary school and high school and even in college was such a big thing for me that I always made sure that I was there. I can talk, I can feel, I can see. And one thing I must say is that when I was younger, I was admired of the Nike and the Jordan brand. And the reason why I loved it so much is that one thing that marketing in that basketball athlete environment, they were so good at marketing their brands about be like Jordan, be like this, be like that. And I think it's a responsibility as pet professional that we send out that message by saying, you know, come work in the pet industry. This is a fulfilling job. If you love animals, whatever stage or wherever part you want to work in it, it's our responsibility to continue doing that community outreach and putting that positive message, and also making sure that it's very diverse, that, you know, whatever message is out there, you're seeing Black, brown, Indians, Chinese, you know, Caucasians, that are all in this branded message, because then it's going to draw those young kids who are interested in working with animals because they see people that look and feel that looks just like them. So I think it's our ownership, and in terms of pet professional, you know, just summarize it up, is to make sure that we're always reaching out and we're showing love and support so that people would know that there's a pathway into the industry.
Mm-hmm. I love that so much, especially saying somebody that looks like them, because I didn't have anybody to look up to as a woman looking at anybody that would be in a pet business. I didn't even know that that was a possibility when I was a kid, you know, like I had a dog, I did dog training, I learned everything I could about dog training, but there was nobody that was like, hey, you know what, you can actually do this. So I think that's so, so important.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one thing I would also add is, and actually Sterling gave a presentation about this, is cultural bias. And so, you know, when you have a customer who comes into your store, I know there's been some issues in animal welfare in the past of putting up a lot of barriers to adoption. So here you have all these animals that need homes, but yet some, you know, for example, some rescue groups or shelters, they're well-meaning, but they will put restrictions such as, to adopt a dog, you must have a fenced-in yard. Well, you're automatically putting barriers on access to a dog. And so that's one thing when if you're a pet business owner and you have a customer that doesn't look like you, be careful about not making assumptions. And I'm just going to give you the obvious one. A lot of people think, you know, African American men, they just love pit bulls, you know, and look at Sterling. Does he have a pit bull? No,
I have a pit bull.
Exactly. And so never make assumptions
Right.
when you meet somebody. I mean, take the time to get to know them first.
I love that. It's so true. It's so important. It's so important. So, with that, I'm curious, what do you think that the strides the pet industry can take to be more diverse and inclusive? And before we wrap up, I would love to know
Yeah.
your guys' thoughts on that.
Man, I just want to I want to just bring back to branding and marketing. I think it's the ownership of the pet industry as a whole. Whenever they bring out a new product, a new shampoo, a new clippers, or a new service, or a new television show, or a new whatever, you have to make sure that you include everyone in terms of your branding. You gotta make sure you have African Americans, Caucasians, Chinese, you know, big, tall, Black men, you know, short, you know, women, whatever it is. You have to make sure that the world see you as a whole, that there's a diversity in the people, just as much as diversity in the dogs. You know, like, you know how some brands only use certain type of dogs for their marketing. I think it's also, you know, it brings this feeling towards, you know, consumers that, you know, pit bulls are for strong Black persons. A lot of my clients who have pit bulls, they have mixed breeds, are women. They're literally women. They
Mhm.
fell in love with this dog, and this is the cutest dog ever. And they have their reasons why they have, these breeds. So it's not really men, and they're not being trained to attack. They're being trained to love and kiss and hugs. So it's like that's the dispel that we need to do, where it should include all dogs in terms of diversity and all people in terms of diversity, and change all these barriers and where certain dogs fit to certain demographics. I think that's the problem.
Mhm.
I agree with the branding and marketing. I just want to say one thing, and then I'm going to have Mary and Sterling also say what we could do better as an industry as a whole to be more diverse and inclusive. A few years ago, I was at, I think it was Global, and I was taking pictures of all the pit bulls in the branding and marketing because I was shocked to see pit bulls. And I love all dogs, but not golden retrievers or cute little fluffy dogs in major, booths. And I was like, wow, this is so cool to see that. So I agree with that. Mary, would you like to add into that?
Love to. I just think in terms of workforce development that the pet industry has so many different levels of jobs. I mean, there are jobs that, a teenager could do, and it could be a wonderful training program to train future animal welfare or animal industry professionals. And I just feel like being more inclusive and perhaps, hire somebody that doesn't look like you or talk like you, and you'll find that, your culture, your workplace just becomes more enriched when you have different kinds of people, that you can all be part of a team together. And I would love to see more people of color and more women in higher level positions in the pet industry.
Yes, I
Mm.
agree. And I feel like you'll be enriched and you'll also learn so much from each other as well.
Yeah,
Mhm.
of course.
Sterling, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. I one of the things that I get a lot is people ask me, why do I focus so heavily on Black and brown communities with cat rescue? Like, you talk about it a lot, as TNR is supposed to be about the cats. And that's one of the things that I think we got to realize is like in the military, we would always say, you only as strong as your weakest link. So in the pet industry, in this pet world, the Black and brown communities, that's the weakest link. So I put emphasis on that. And in doing that, and in anybody doing that, what we're doing is making a more diverse situation for the animals. You look at it for the animals, the most progressive communities are the most diverse communities. And that's something we need to realize outside of everything. When you broaden everything like that, when you have a diverse group, a diverse board on your nonprofit, with employment, when you do that, you're creating more opportunities and ideas for the animals. So we got to look at it like that and understand it. It's not just about race, color, and everything like that. Ultimately, it is for the animals, and that is better for the animals. I've been in situations where nobody on the board looked like me. So they didn't understand what Trap King was. They didn't understand. They just saw it in an Urban Dictionary and they thought, well, that's bad. But they didn't understand that I was trying to turn a negative into a positive. So it's important that we have diversity on our boards and employment and across the board in animal rescue as a whole, because it's more help and it's more beneficial to the animals ultimately.
Everyone's included.
Right.
Yes. Well, this has been awesome. You guys, I agree with everything you're saying about diversity, and I hope that it helps bring change. And, like Brian was saying before, and I was saying that our common denominator, and you were all saying, is pets, right? Our love of pets. So I think that we could continue this conversation for hours and hours, but I think we're going to be wrapping up. So again, thank you guys so much for being here, taking the time, telling us your stories. Is there one more thing I just want to quickly ask? How can they find you on social media?
Um,
At Whisker Media. Sorry.
Good. I'm usually on Instagram, the_original_Trap King. And I'm probably, if you go in the Facebook cat group that's saying something about rescue, I'm probably in it. So cat stuff on Facebook too.
And
Yeah,
Brian?
I'm the dog father of Harlem. You can catch me on Facebook and Instagram as that. And Clubhouse a little bit, but yeah, but the Dog Father of Harlem, I keep it very simple.
Awesome. So if anybody's looking to work with any of our three wonderful guests from today, please reach out to them. And I, again, thank you guys so much for being here, and can't wait to see everybody at Global 2022 in person, but this has been amazing.
Thank you so much for having us. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.